reference to end times persecution, and I guess this would apply to any kind of persecution, whether we are officially in the last days or not. As Christians, are we called to lay down and take what is to come to ourselves and our children, or are we called to defend ourselves and bear arms? Let me just offer a couple of thoughts that might guide your thinking on this. I think that self-defense is not only morally appropriate, but it's a moral obligation. And part of that is because human beings are valuable, and allowing a human life to be taken without proper justification is wrong. So if I were to watch somebody else's life being taken and I had an opportunity to protect them, then, and I didn't do that, well, then there would be something amiss on me. I'd have an obligation to act where I could. And I don't see it makes any difference whether the valuable life being threatened is somebody else's or my own, okay? Now, I get a chance to offer my life as a sacrifice on behalf of somebody else if I want to. That is, I could die on behalf of someone else. I could put myself in harm's way to protect somebody else. But that's up to me. Sometimes I think we're morally obliged to do that depending on the circumstance. So as a general rule, defending innocent life is entirely biblically sound and appropriate, even if the defense of that biblical life is our own. Certainly if it's our children. Now, sometimes that cannot be avoided. Sometimes being faithful to Christ means that our lives are going to be threatened. Sometimes, the history of the church is filled with such a thing. And even now, currently in our world, not in our culture at the moment, but Christians are losing their lives for their fidelity to Christ. And when push comes to shove, we have no alternative, in my view, but to be faithful to Jesus regardless of the cost to us personally. And that faithfulness to Christ entails not just my own life being threatened, but also my children's life being threatened, my family, my wife, the rest of them. Now, I don't relish that thought. But if I am being asked to renounce Christ to save my children, I cannot do that. Does the blood of Christ cover that kind of thing? Yes, of course. But out of fidelity, it's the wrong thing to do if I'm trying to be faithful to Christ. All right? Now, however, that doesn't mean that we have to just subject ourselves to whatever persecution comes our way if we can avoid it. And the first choice, the first plan of action whenever persecution presents itself is to flee. Paul was let down in a basket, right, over the walls of one of the cities in order to escape the persecution that was threatening him. Jesus said, when they persecute you in one city, flee to the next. I think that's in Matthew 10. So we are to try to avoid persecution if we can without sacrificing faithfulness to Christ. But if we are put in a tough situation and it's going to cost us financially or physically or even our life in order to be faithful to Christ, well, then we are obliged to do that. So, yes, fight back if we can. Yes, flee if we can. Yes, protect the innocent if we can. But what we cannot do is deny Christ to save our own lives or the lives of others.